Hi, all. Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Women of the Word podcast. Today, we are in the middle of our discussion about the three legged stool, and we'll be focusing specifically on the small group time. And we have a wonderful guest joining us to do that. So, Jen, would you do the honors of introducing her for our listeners?
I would be happy to, and no one listening will be surprised to know that this is a person I have known and served with for a very long time, Ann Hastings, who we served together on the Bible study team at our local church. And Ann served as the executive director of the Bible study. That sounds like a big title for a Bible study, but we had a very big Bible study. So Ann oversaw the lead team and also spent many, many years making sure that our small group leaders were recruited and trained to do their work well. So, Ann, I am thrilled to have you on today. Ann is my friend as well as my former colleague in that space. So, welcome, welcome.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
And we were laughing because we were texting each other last night, and I was like, I have no worries whatsoever that these questions are going to hit you without any hesitation at all. These are conversations you have had so many times, and I've gotten to hear you train leaders. I've gotten to watch you lead them. And what we really want to give women who are listening today a sense of is, first of all, we want them to understand the importance of the second leg of the three-legged stool. I want to give you a chance to talk about that, but also that there might be some best practices to making sure that that space runs the way that it's going to be most likely to support the learning outcome that might not be top of mind for people who are maybe new to introducing a space like this or who just can't quite figure out why it hasn't gone the way that they've hoped. So my first question to you would be, how do you understand this is a little bit of a pop quiz. How do you understand the second leg of the three-legged stool to function in terms of the learning outcome for a Bible study?
So, small group time, it is a make or break experience in someone's Bible study growth for their group.
Mhm.
No matter how good the teaching is, no matter how good homework is, what you're learning together and how you have space and time to talk about that really impacts people's experience. And
Mhm.
so you can't just do homework and listen. You need to be able to bring your questions and your struggles and I was struggling with that too. And it helps you
Mm.
feel not alone in the I don't know moments that you sit in when you're doing homework. And so it is vital to
Mm.
Bible study.
And so, like, we talk about how a good curriculum creates dissonance,
Mhm.
but the small group leaders and the group participants don't always love it when they're sitting there not knowing what the answer is to a question. What has been your experience in leading through times like that where everybody's like, I don't know what the answer was to that one?
Yeah. Well, it does create an uncomfortable thing when you're sitting there yourself, but it also helps people to see that you're not always going to know the answer. It helps them feel not alone. And typically, you can then say, the teaching will answer that.
Mhm.
But it helps people know that you're going to struggle as you sift through your homework. You're going to not know the answer. It's also good to hear other people might have interpreted it a different way. And so their I don't know might be different than yours. And so it really helps you see that it's an active learning environment. It's not just you sitting there, there's only one right answer. And what are you going to do?
And you've seen, like, women, they want the answer to be right. Like, they
Oh,
wanna get the right answer and show up with it.
yep, that's me.
Yeah, it takes some time, though. Would you say that it takes people a little bit of time to settle into accepting that this is not a place where that's necessarily going to happen?
Definitely. It
Yeah.
takes a little bit of time, and I think the more they come and say, "I don't know," even admitting that in a group, "I don't know what this answer was. I'm having a hard time," seeing that that's a safe place to do that, where other women
Mhm.
also feel safe to say, "I don't know what it was,"
Right.
creates trust also.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you clearly have experience leading these large format, small group spaces. Maybe you could talk a little bit about
Mhm.
what you really love about doing that and what specifically can be challenging in a role like that.
Sure. Well, I love the director part of that is leading a team of women who care as much about Bible study as I do and care about the women of our church. I mean, it gives them a chance to volunteer at their church
Mm.
in a leadership role. And it's really, that is one of my favorite things about it. Being a small group leader myself, I've been a small group leader for 17 years. And I've led in the morning and evening in different size groups. And it gives you a sense of community there that is different than a home group, different than somewhere else, but you just never know. It's a group of women that wouldn't have come together
Mhm.
otherwise normally, and that is fun and challenging all
Yeah.
at the same time.
And what Anna's not telling you is that her group would get very large because she was such a good group leader, and even when she was running the whole thing, she was like, "No, I'm still leading a group. I'm still leading a group."
Yeah.
And so how do you we what would you say, first of all, would be best practice size when we're assigning groups? Like, at what point, like, and there'll be people who are listening who are just leading in their living room. Like, at what point do they know, "Oh, I need to break this down into a smaller number?" And what are just sort of, even though we've all already acknowledged there are some exceptions to the rule, just what are some best practices around knowing when do I need a small group space and then what's the right size and how do I think about that from a week to week attendance standpoint?
I think 12 is my ideal size because week to week, you're going to have people that don't come. And so maybe you'll have 8 to 10 there each time,
Mhm.
something like that. Once you get above 15, it makes it enough to where there are certain people that aren't able to participate in the group because of various reasons of there's the overtalker or the person who has every answer, things like that. And so 12 is the ideal size. I would say if you're leading in your home and you are getting to a point where you don't have enough room and you for seats, bottoms and seats, then it's probably time to start thinking about moving somewhere else and having maybe two smaller groups and then coming together for teaching. You want everyone to be able to participate and feel like they have a chance to say and answer. Yeah.
So, when you're talking about learning environments and preserving the learning outcome, what are some of the ways that you train so that there is a cohesive group dynamic that is also serving the purpose of that meeting space?
Yeah, I think, as I said earlier, it really matters someone's small group experience and your methods matter, specifically how you handle the details of your group members' experience. And so your role as a small group leader might seem intuitive. You're going to go show up and lead, but there are certain things that really matter to the participants. And so we talk about like being prepared beforehand to serve your group. You take the time to do your homework, you take the time to study, you read, you pray for your small group members before you meet, and then establish a caring atmosphere for when they're there. Communicate openness, facial expressions. It definitely matters as somebody's answering a question, you're looking at them with your body language. You authentically share what you are learning
Mhm.
so that they see that you are also struggling. You're not there maybe specifically teaching them, depending on the size of your Bible study, but be willing to share what you are learning as well.
Mhm.
I think something that's been really important is not be careful not to share something that has been mentioned
Uh,
personally for a member in that space that's been shared with you in confidence
uh.
when you're talking to continue to just keep that space safe. And facilitating small group, my favorite thing is start and end on time. Um,
Yes, hallelujah.
Use your time well because it honors
Mhm.
your members. And so it's something we
Mhm.
talk about in training when we do training is start and end on time so everybody has a set expectation of I know that if I get there at 7:05, they will have already started the discussion. Also, silence is okay. And so when you ask a question, a lot of people are really quick to jump and give a response. And so something that I do, I will count to 10
Mm.
in my head. I will give 10 whole seconds.
Ugh,
And
so
I
terrible.
should say that. I've never actually gotten to
Okay.
10. Somebody can't stand it and will answer. And so, yeah, I think building relationships, like I said, praying for
Mm,
each member, pay attention to the needs. Like sometimes you can, if you're actively listening to a woman respond to a question, you can hear some underlying things in what she's saying,
mhm.
to where maybe you can reach out to her afterwards so that you are paying attention to what needs that they're maybe not saying that you're not going to address in a big group. Always plan a gathering outside of your small group time. And so
Mhm.
small group time, hopefully you're talking about homework and what you learned that week. And so we always say, like, once a semester, go meet with everybody outside of there so you can have fellowship. Then look for another person to lead. So if you don't have another person leading with you, always be on the lookout for one person that could be your co leader or maybe your next leader for another group and see. That is the best way to find new leaders, I
Uh,
believe, in general. But always be looking for others to lead. And it could even be somebody sends out prayer requests that week or somebody sends out the weekly email. But the best way to get women involved is yes, to have them come talk about homework, but giving them a responsibility. Somebody loves administration. Let them send the
uh.
weekly email for your group. And they feel now a sense of belonging and responsibility and a little bit of leadership. So,
It is now the time for you to tell people how I first met you and what you were doing at the Bible study at that time.
yeah. So, well, this is the very first Bible study I ever did in my life was a James study.
Mhm.
And I showed up and was on the greeting team, which was my
Uh-huh.
favorite. I get to say hi to everyone and welcome them. And so, creating a welcoming
Mm,
environment matters, and
yeah.
just welcoming people as they come in, whether that's in your family room or at the church doors
Yeah.
or sitting in your group as people are coming in.
I wanna circle back. I want us to talk more about finding leaders and
Yeah.
how we do that, but you mentioned getting together outside of the small group meeting time, and I know that what we would see on the surveys, at least early on when we started doing the Bible study, was, "We need more time in small group. We need more time in small group. We need," and we were like, "You can't have it." Like,
Yep.
we don't have more childcare time, we, and we needed the ways we had broken it out, and that just for those who are listening, we would do 45 minutes in small group time and a transition time with singing and announcements, and then we would do 45 minutes of teaching. And one of the ways that we alleviated that felt need of like, gosh, it's just not long enough, was to start having other gathering times. Because you correct me if I'm wrong on this. I feel like a lot of what they're saying when they say we want more time is we want to build relationships with each other, and 45 minutes is not enough time to talk about the lesson and build relationships.
Yep, absolutely. And another thing that we implemented that besides that is prayer requests. Prayer
Mhm.
matters. And
Mhm.
it's challenging how to set that up. I think any women's group of Bible study or whatever has tried to figure out how do we talk about the topic we're supposed to be here to talk about, but also honor prayer requests. And so having everybody have a 3x5 index card on their seat when they sit down, and people are hesitant, especially if they're new, to like share a prayer request, I have found. And so I say at the beginning of every semester that we start Bible study. Every week, I want you to fill out this card and I want you to make it about you. So pick a fruit of the spirit if you can't come up with something. And prayer matters, and it matters that everybody prays for each other.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so we want to pray for your mom or whatever else is happening as well. But we want to give the women each other in a way that we want to talk about Bible study, but we want them to have a prayer request available to them. And
Mhm.
then another little one step further that I think has been great, we have them write down their phone number on a post it and throw it in the middle of the circle or the table. And then before you get up and leave small group, you take that post it and then you text the person whose name and number is on that. There then you are praying for them. You could meet up with
Mhm.
them, go to coffee or call, and that gives them another layer of giving them each other and giving them time.
Mhm.
But you're not using your 45 minutes in your small group time where you're supposed to be talking about the homework
Mm,
for those
that's
things.
a good
That's
idea.
good.
At first, when you were saying that, I thought you just put their number on, and I was like,
I
"You
did
don't know
too.
who." You just have to text
Name
and
and
be like,
number.
who is this?"
Yeah.
"I'm from Bible study."
Please.
That makes a lot more
Click on
sense.
this link.
Thank you for clarifying, Lauren.
Ah.
It's good.
So let's go back in and talk a little bit more about how you select leaders for small group. You mentioned that in an answer previously. What process do you use for that, and how did you get to that process?
Yeah, so I think starting off, you ask women that you know, right? People that you know that could facilitate a discussion and that you trust. And from there, you have those women be looking for women in their group that could handle the discussion who care about Bible study, obviously. And then we saw a need for more and more leaders, obviously, as the
Mhm.
Bible study grew. And so the best way for you to do that is to use the women that you already have that you know to be looking for other women. And I think having a co-leader is a really great thing. It helps if someone is sick or something like that. And so we ended up making it to where every leader needs a co-leader. And then you needed to have been a co-leader before you led. Now, when you're just
Mhm.
starting off, that's a little bit more difficult. But the idea is that they've had practice in a group before they go on and lead their own group. And then we became like a I wanna say like a parachurch Bible study for a little while. We had like women from 53 churches coming.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
what we realized is we really would like to have like a basic theological belief that they all have. And so we ended up having a small group leader application.
Mhm.
So if you wanted to be a small group leader, you apply, it asks basic questions, and then we had someone meet with them in person. And those help you in several ways. It helps know that they're solid theologically and they can handle the basic things that they need to know, but also, it helps them have another layer of accountability. They've had to
Mhm.
apply, they've had to be approved. And I think it really has gone well. And we also implemented like a 2-year commitment. And so then you have a point where you come back and can circle back. And so if something isn't going great, you can have a, hey, it's your 2 years is up. I mean, we want you to keep leading, but if you need to circle back, you have now a natural point to do so.
Yeah.
Mm. Yeah. Jen, what would you
Yeah,
say?
off-ramps, matter. They
Yep.
matter on both sides of the equation.
Absolutely.
Sometimes people want a polite way to say, "Hey," and we found often that women had seasons in which they could lead and seasons in which they couldn't, and we'd say, "Whenever you're ready to come back, let us know," because, life happens and they don't wanna feel like once they're not leading anymore, there's no way to come back into that space. And I think, the application process was good, and whether you're doing this on a small scale or a larger scale, I would say sit down and have a conversation with someone, even if you're not at a place where you need an application. But having a process gave us a way. It was more to catch outliers than it was to make sure that everybody was, like standard issue.
Right.
And it was also a way, like, if there was something that was a belief that our church didn't hold, but that was not outside of orthodoxy, say it was a view on baptism that was different than ours, to say, "Hey, we appreciate that view. We just need you to recognize the views of the space that you're in and just lead your group in accordance with those." And that seemed to work pretty well. So, but what I mean, like, gosh, it's so much harder to remove a difficult leader than to recruit the right person in the first place. But it does take some time. Like you said, you have to go through that initial, like, hey, we're going to invite people who we think would be good. And then as the space matures, then you're able to have more of a process. It's
And
kind of
if
like,
you've met with them ahead of time,
yeah.
they now have a relationship with you, and so if something ever does arise in their group or you're hearing feedback, hopefully from members of your Bible study, you have a relationship with this leader now that you could go and talk to openly, and you've had a conversation of what it you've trained them, you've had a conversation of what it means to be a leader, expectations you have of a leader, and so open communication is always better.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so you've been in the trenches for a long time, and we're not doing a million things. We're doing like a Bible literacy space that goes line by line. What are some tricks of the trade as a small group leader that you have used and trained others to use to keep the conversation thought level when it's supposed to be? And, like, what do I do if someone says something totally nuts?
Which never happens.
Never happens.
Yeah. So your job as a leader is to create the place for focused discussion, right? You need to
Hmm.
be gracious and model kindness, agree or disagree gently in truth and love. I really think that goes a long way. And loving your group members well will give them a safe place to share. And so I've had quiet groups, I've had the one silent person, the person that always wants to give their answer and it's typically wrong. And so I think always, anytime anyone gives an answer that is maybe not one that you would love or is wrong, you thank them for sharing. And if you have a co leader or someone else in your group, sometimes you can look to them and they can come in and correct gently, or you can. And saying, I thought of it differently. I thought of it like this. This is how I got my answer. And so, not disagreeing aggressively or
Hmm.
sarcastically helps people know it's okay for me to bring the wrong answer and I'm being directed the right way kindly.
Mm.
The prone to wander group is really hard, is what that's what I uh, so I think
Lord, I feel it.
setting the expectation from the first meeting of you're beginning on time, you're ending on time, we're going to talk about the homework
Mhm.
questions. Your job is to, if it starts going off the rails a little, to bring it back. And so you can easily just say, oh, I'd love to talk about that later. Why don't we move on to question 8? And you can do that lovingly, but to where people see the guidelines that you're given and they know that they're going to be there to talk about the homework.
Mhm, mhm.
The group therapy group is just really hard also. Where everybody wants to is I think it's important to know, is everyone safe in the group? Does anybody need outside counseling? You talk to them outside of the group, not in the group. And again, setting the expectation from the beginning. But I think listening as women answer can help you maybe make the group not group therapy by talking to that individual person outside. I have found if there's an oversharer or somebody that really seems to want to go off topic or talk about their needs, if I will
Mhm,
just ask them to come a little early or find them afterwards and I will talk to them, they end up not bringing that to group and they'll just bring it to me,
mhm.
which is fine because I'm the leader.
Well, and more of those things tend to happen before you've established the culture.
Right.
Once people understand, "Oh, it's this, not that," some of these things get to be they never go away entirely, but they can become less frequent, but so much of what we're training leaders into is maybe not what they were accustomed to when they were leading a small group in another space. And so it's a retraining and saying, hey, I know you've been in a lot of groups where it was all feelings level or where it was heavily application driven. And this is not that. There's nothing wrong with those groups. This is not that. And we, again and again in our trainings, would say, this is not that. This is what this is, and this is why. And before long, those leaders get bought into the method. They themselves have felt the effects of it, in their spiritual formation. And you have to do less of it. But as you get new leaders in, you get back into that cycle again of like, hey, this is what we're doing here. But yeah, and I've seen you guys just over and over again. I mean, it would be like every fall would roll around and I would think, I wonder how many they need to lead these groups. And that's not my problem. And you guys would just bring them in and train them up. It's amazing.
Them catching the vision really
Mm.
matters for
Yeah. And you can't repeat the vision enough.
no.
You just really can't. You just got to keep saying it over and over again. Well, so pastoral challenges are going to arise in these groups. And we actually are going to have an opportunity to hear from Summer Berger, who did some marvelous trainings with our small groups leaders to help them. But what would be some common challenges that might arise that we would need to train our leaders to be able to handle effectively?
So benevolence, marriage issues are probably the two that come up.
Mhm.
And whether it's like an outright, here, I'm going to tell you I need this, or you're catching it in what they're saying in their prayer requests or how they're answering.
Mhm.
I think those are the biggest ones. Women who need help, who don't know they need help, number one, and you're catching it where they're coming to you
Mhm.
and asking. And so I think giving your leaders a clear pathway for to know in your church, this is where those requests go.
Mhm.
And that your leader is not a counselor. Your leader is a facilitator for this small group discussion. And they are
Mhm.
you as a leader are your small group's point person for church for
Mhm.
what they need. And so equipping your leaders with where however that looks in your church, where would someone go who needs benevolence? Where would someone go who needs marriage help? And being able to have your small group leaders equipped to know it, see it, and be able to connect that person alleviates your small group leader from being that person for them, but also helps care for the people of your group really well.
And so it's important, I mean, for a group leader to know just because you're a Christian with a Bible doesn't mean that you are trained or equipped to deal with certain levels of pastoral care. That was a big training emphasis that
Yes.
we had to get into. And the idea of like, hey, so and so is in crisis. Can we all collect money for that person? Which sounds so great, right? And depending on the nature of the group and the size of the group, might be totally appropriate. I just want to say there are times when that's appropriate, but you're in a local church and you're listening to this, we learned pretty quickly that it's way smarter to run things through your church's official benevolence channels than to have a group who's trying to gather money to help a particular person. Because, for one thing, sometimes you don't know how to vet that need the way that you should. We've had people who had kept showing up in groups with ongoing needs, and you don't when you're saying yes to that first one, you're not thinking, "Oh, this could be something that could stretch on for years." So, yeah, just we learned some things the hard way and
Uh,
some ways the easy way, I would say.
yep.
And what would you say are some of the most common ways that a small group would flounder? And how would you address a leader when a group isn't thriving?
Well, how would you know too?
That's a great question. Yeah. Common ways for a small group to flounder. I think you can look at attendance. So if women aren't coming back and the group
Mm,
seems to just be getting
mhm,
smaller and smaller, that would be one of those. I would say we had someone on our leadership team that was a small group leader coordinator, and that was their job, was to reach out to small group leaders. And so that
mhm,
person had a pulse on how are all the small group leaders doing. So again, communicating with your leaders, checking in on them throughout the semester. How is your group going? Those things I think will help catch a floundering group before it goes too far south. Checkpoints and the open communication, I really do think matters.
mhm,
Make sure that your leaders feel equipped and thanked and appreciated for what they're doing. Has them come if they have a problem, they can come and say, "Hey, I'm seeing this in my group right now." That has been really helpful for us to be able to have like, what questions do you have as leaders? And what are you seeing in your group? And a lot of times you're seeing the same questions or you're seeing the same problems. And so even just giving the leaders each other and with challenges is good.
that's
Mm.
really good. Well, I can say with some authority that you are absolutely correct that that small group piece is absolutely the most important factor in whether people stay in Bible study once they come. And we would tell the leaders that every year we would say the success or failure of this really rests on the experience in that small group. I've been in a bad one and I've been in a good one. I'm sure you have too, Laura, and I would imagine, Anne, you had your share as well. And you don't want to come back. It doesn't matter if Billy Graham is leading the Bible study, if your small group is not going well, but one that is going well just undergirds everything that you're hoping for. It is building relationship and it's also building spiritual practices. Like I hope our listeners heard that when Anne was talking about like the practice of prayer and the practice of vulnerability in those spaces and of having thought level discussions and utilizing the feelings level or story portions of the discussion as appropriate, but not as center stage. So, and we're so grateful that you were willing to come on and share your years of experience with us on this.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I love talking about it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Anne. I second what Jen was saying. I think that the small group time of a Bible study can just go in a lot of different directions. And so having some kind of touch points and things that our listeners can kind of hold on to and use as they move forward in their own small group time is just really helpful. And we're grateful for your wisdom and expertise. Be sure to tune in next week for the conclusion to the three-legged stool discussion where we'll discuss curriculum. You won't want to miss it. We'll see you then.